Some of you, one or two of you out there watching these videos, are likely Survivor fans. I know it's a lot more than that. And I know a lot of you have been waiting a long time for comments on Survivor. If you've seen some of the footage from videos that I've just started to post again, you'll get a sense of where I've been and why there's been such a gap. I'm really sorry about the gap. My focus, because of how my life has been unfolding, has not been on Survivor. However, I have never missed an episode. I love the game, as many of you know. And come on, season 47. What the living hell? Now we've got players. Season 47 had more of what I considered to be really super effective Survivor players who understand the game than any other season I can recall. I think it's one of the best seasons that's ever aired. That's my personal opinion. And let's talk a little bit about what went on, what you probably noticed, and why those kinds of things happen. Let me talk big picture for a second. That's what I'm talking about when I say there were so many effective players. Some of the players on season 47 came to me prior to going out there. So I actually had some insight into their personalities before they even went out. And even those players who had some real preparation, who really understood the game, were affected in ways that were destructive to their game while it was going on. The reason I bring that up is because for those of you who are long-term fans, I think you understand a little bit from watching Survivor how hard it is. Survivor's hard. It looks hard. But Survivor is so much harder than it looks. It's probably hard for you to even understand. But think about this in season 47. These people raised the game to a level, I think, beyond that which it's been played before. So here are people who were prepared, insightful, introspective. They understood themselves. They were really, really ready to go, and still got overwhelmed by the gameplay and the emotion of it and the stress and the detachment from all those things that we think of as creature comforts, and detachment from anyone who cares about them in real life, their families. You can't count on anybody around you. What are the relationships? Do they really care about me? Do they love me? Do they even know me? All of those things take a toll. And in season 47, it was more clear than ever. But let's talk just briefly about some of the players, because some of the things that happened really brought some sincere concerns to mind for me. For example, Andy. Andy lost it. I can't really go into too much about I don't have time in the video background, so hopefully those of you who are listening to this video know enough about the show and watched it and followed it pretty well. So in the beginning, Andy got so stressed that he literally broke down on camera in front of everyone and was starting to kind of implode with the idea that nobody likes him. They all dislike him. Nobody's interested in his input. They're not interested in sharing with him. He's being dismissed in ways that triggered in him some very, very, what I think of as serious psychological concerns. What I thought when this was happening was, what was casting's responsibility? Is it okay for casting to take personalities that might be particularly fragile and subject those people to these kind of stresses for a game, for money? The people who are casting it are making money for CBS in doing that. And let me be clear, I'm not saying they did. I'm not saying casting crossed a line. I'm just bringing up the topic for you to think about. What is the line? Is there a line that shouldn't be crossed with respect to a participant's potential fragility? There are psychologists involved in selecting these participants, but when Andy broke down, and he's not the first, there were others in seasons prior to this, and there were more in this season that had me thinking, what is this game worth? And whose responsibility is it to ask themselves how close to the line are they getting when they cast a particular individual with his or her particular level of psychological fragility? I hope those of you who watched know the incident I'm talking about with Andy, because in this case, it certainly changes. Something happened after that, and Andy was able to not just get it together, but show us his understanding of the game and his ability to play it and to move through it in ways that were really rewarding to watch. My concern isn't about the watching. My concern is about what happens when they go home, Andy and whomever else who might have been so strongly impacted by being exposed to the stresses, the psychological stresses of a game where people are literally lying to your face and doing it as well and as craftily as is humanly possible, so you don't know who you can trust. And you really do start to get insecure more than you already are, and to ask yourself all kinds of difficult questions. And if you aren't prepared for that, if you aren't sufficiently aware of who you are before you get out there, those things can do some real significant harm. But I hope you really enjoyed the way Andy played after that, because Andy really, swung for the fences. He really went hard after that. And I didn't know if he was even going to be able to continue in the game. So that was exciting. But in its excitement, I did have to ask myself, what is that line? And are there people out there who are taking their responsibility really, really to heart when it comes to not crossing it when someone's life may be affected post-game in ways that are really, really damaging? The truth is, in the early years, survivors, producers, etc., did not do what they should do for the participants after they leave the game. I was not supported in any way, shape, or form, and was left to the wolves, really, with respect to these tax issues and having gone to prison and everything else. All of that could have been managed with minimal involvement from Survivor Production or CBS or anyone else. And instead, they did the opposite. They detached themselves. So when it comes to the personal and the damage that can be done to someone's psyche as a result of the stresses from the game, what I've learned is that the production does get more involved afterwards. There are participants from earlier seasons than season 47 that I've talked with who have really struggled when they left, and they did get the support from the production team and from psychologists as they needed it. So I hope that's something, if you didn't know it, that you can feel pretty good about if you have some of the concerns I do with respect to who they're choosing to play this game. Let's talk about some of the other participants. Look, I threw it out there that some of these players know how to play the game better than almost anyone that's been playing. There were several of them. What'd you think of Genevieve? What'd you think of Sam? What'd you think of Teeny? What on earth did you think of the winner? What'd you think of Rachel? What do I mean when I talk about an effective player? There have been literally hundreds and hundreds of Survivor players to date. But this season, what we saw were people who, in the midst of playing this game, kept a level head and did not allow their emotional reactions to override their strategy, the tactics that would make most sense to be deployed when they needed to be deployed. Let's just start with Rachel. Look at that woman. What did you think when she laid down in a bush and overheard, listened to intentionally all kinds of information being exchanged among the other participants about her, about their strategy, about the game, that she didn't overreact to, that she slid away without them knowing and just kept to herself to use brilliantly within the game. That's just one silly, crazy example of what we have not seen done well in 40-something seasons prior to this. She was amazing, I think, in the way with which she maintained focus. That's one of the things I've talked about for decades now with respect to what it takes to win the game. If you can't maintain your focus, if you aren't able to manage your emotions and the stresses of the game in such a way that you lose sight of your goal, which is to win the $1 million, which is to make sure that there are people at the end who will vote for you to win the $1 million, which is not to just get all excited about one particular aspect or something that's happening that day, or lose it because you didn't get selected for a reward, or lose it because you lost a challenge, or those kind of emotional reactions left corralled, unmanaged, or poorly managed can lose you the game in that instant. And that's common. That happens lots. So I was just thrilled. This season, what I got to watch was people doing not just an occasional maintaining of their focus, but throughout, just really maintaining their focus. I was glued to this season, thrilled with the opportunity to see people going head to head who play this well. It had been so long in coming that I'd come to believe that the casting professionals might actually not want really great players, because I would think by now that people in casting would understand what it takes to play well and be able to select some of those people. They're not easy to find. Sorry, I do recognize that, but I know they're out there. There are fans of the show, and there are people who've never even seen it who, with a few questions, you could determine, look, they have what it takes. They could understand the game and maintain that focus and play it well. Now, season 47, they put them out there for us to watch. And it was great. The going head-to-head raised the game, even in the midst of all the twists and turns and additions to the game that make the game different each time. People weren't undermined by their inability to play in this season the way has so often happened prior to it. So for me, that was just crazy, crazy, crazy exciting. I mean, Sam, gosh, was anyone down as much as he was and managed to get through all of what he needed to do to stay in there? Did anyone communicate in other seasons as well as Genevieve did to us, to the viewers in her confessionals, like what she was thinking and what was going on and how that dynamic shifted and when she was having compassion and what she needed to do with that compassion? I appreciate someone's ability to separate what they're doing in the game from what they should share with us as viewers. And she did that just beautifully. Oh, I never mentioned Carolyn, she played really, really well too. So there are people who get out, who are voted off the show, who played really, really well, but circumstances don't allow them to just get all the way. And that happened here. But wow, there are just so many good players to talk about. I know how well Teeny was playing in the beginning, and I bet most of you saw her skills with respect to social dynamics. I thought she was amazing in the way that she would engage player after player after player and be non-threatening but involved, etc. It was only later when her emotions overrode her focus. And I understand how. These stresses are real out there, let me tell you. But it was sad for Teeny, but fascinating for us viewers to watch the kind of breakdown of something that we saw being played so well. And I hope you appreciate that that was real, that those stresses are something, even as prepared as Teeny might have been, she couldn't overcome in the time. I know she probably understands it now. I know she can look back at the season and go, oh, but I also know she gave it all she got. And, gave it all she had and played really well, but her emotions definitely got the best of her too often, and it cost her. There are so many players that I could talk more about on season 47 that really did well and were interesting, and I've got to just give kudos to casting because it was just so well done this season. How about Gabe? Gabe was out front and bombastic and descriptive when he was talking with us about what was going on, etc. But he was doing that also a little too much, I think, within the context of the game, and that led to his demise. How about Sue? Let's talk about that game. Sue played a very, very interesting game. Personally, I don't think she was assertive enough to garner the votes that she needed from others, even if her game was as intentional as she believed it to be. She was perceived by others as so little of a threat that it looked too much like she was brought along for her to be awarded the win at the end. I think that's where it comes from, that even if your game is effective as someone who is kind of a subtle player or less assertive, and you're doing that calculatedly, and you understand the game, but you're also letting yourself be brought along. You've got to make enough noise or do it in a way that is clear enough to sufficient number of people who are also participating to earn their votes. Otherwise, even if your game was perfect and got you to the end, you don't get the votes, and that's the game. So you run the risk of being kind of like Russell, where Russell's like, I should have won. I did so well. I'm perfect. I'm amazing. Oh, but Russell doesn't even understand how to play Survivor. Survivor isn't about finding every idol. Survivor isn't about winning every competition. Survivor, the game, is about winning the million. It's about getting the votes at the end. And you cannot do that without managing the jury really well. And part of managing the jury well for Russell was obvious. He was just idiotic with a lot of people, and there were nowhere near sufficient number who were going to credit him with a win when he mistreated people for no reason. But mismanagement of the jury is also something we could talk about with respect to like Sue, where she did misunderstand what it takes to get that vote. It isn't enough to just get there. You have to get there in a way that those who are going to be voting, you believe and you can argue should vote for you. You've earned it, proving that you've earned it. So it's fascinating. It's subtle. The subtleties in this game that it takes to win are endless, countless, and I think those who are those people who study the game know what I'm talking about. Those people who are just watching it for the first few times, I bet you still know what I'm talking about. But you may not understand just how important these subtleties are and how many of them need to come into play in order for you to be that sole survivor, to be someone who takes that $1 million home from the beginning, right from the outset, maintaining your focus, remaining adaptable, and above all, know yourself, being introspective enough to even be there in the first place. Otherwise, pieces start to crumble and you just don't get the opportunity to take home that big check, that big win, and the title that so many people want of sole survivor. But it's a great game. Keep watching. Season 47 gives me hope that lots to come might be really, really, really interesting. I, like many of you, have been getting very frustrated with some of the twists that are just outside of players' control and really undermine the actual game of Survivor. But I think the format this season gave us everything we were looking for. And the edit gave us some good insight into who the players were that we need in order to be connected, to stay connected with them, to understand them, and to keep rooting for them. So yay. You don't hear me often talking about how well a season is being done, but that's because I haven't thought they have been. I think we're in for some more good TV. Keep watching.